Hey guys, Magnet here with another Legacy of the Void beta game. Let's take a look at another one from a really good guy named Neuro, who was kind enough to send me his big replay pack. Check out his stream, which I'm going to link down there in a description and in the annotation. So check it out, pop over there, say hi when he's streaming, and tell him I sent you over. His opponent's going to be Gretorp, who is a pretty well-known caster, kind of a little bit back in the day when NASL was still together, still doing content. He's still around playing games a lot, still streaming as well, so say hi to him as well for me. It's going to be Gretorp versus Neuro like we mentioned, and Gretorp looks like he's going to go Command Center first, considering the depot was a little bit late. I guess it doesn't matter too much if he's just going to go ahead and drop a Command Center, but still, you don't typically want to block yourself too hard to be producing SCVs, considering you can't really be producing right now. So just a tad late, maybe some alt-tab action right there. Not too big of a deal in these type of games, especially since everyone's still learning. Neuro, like we expected, hatch first from Zerg, and I think hatch first is probably just going to be commonplace in almost every game in Legacy of the Void, so probably should get used to seeing that just a little bit. Drop in the pool here, probably going to drop a gas fairly soon as well, just to get that Zergling speed, which you definitely need out, so there's that gas as well. Terran, on the meantime, grabbing the refinery, grabbing the barracks here, just going for a fairly normal follow-up after that. Nothing super old school like 2 barracks or anything like that, considering these command center builds are basically more safe than they've ever been. Let's talk about this map a little bit though. This is a 4-player spawn map, and the distance between these two, if they spawn at close positions, is actually really close. So the Zerg will probably take this base, the Terran will probably take this base, but still the difference between these two in terms of map size is actually not very far at all, as Gretorp could be right up in his face, get some decent siege positions here, maybe with tanks or widow mines or whatever he decides to use throughout the course of the game, which could present a lot of problems, but these maps are definitely pretty weird. This map, if I have to say, really does just look like a Blizzard map, as it's kind of bare bones. It kind of just conveys a really generic idea. Nothing too dressed up, say like Overgrowth, which is definitely made by third parties. But anyway, some random observations for you guys. Some Zerglings coming out right now from Neuro, just trying to stay a little bit safe. These Zerglings are actually pretty plentiful. 8 lings already, and I think part of this is he doesn't really know what's going on, so if there's anything super weird like a Cyclone opener, you don't want to get caught with your pants down against that, and 8 lings would be plenty against something like that. So nothing too crazy, but still kind of a little bit of extra ling production here in the early game. And for the most part, once Neuro figures out what's going on, it's going to be like, okay, not really a whole lot I can do with these guys, but I guess it was safe considering I didn't really know what was going on. Considering he has not scouted, he doesn't even know where Gretorp is right now. The only thing you can assume is he's not over here, considering he didn't see his base. But Roach Warren on the way right now, just general safety type of stuff. By the way, this is a weird map too because there are 2 entrances to the natural, so that can become a big problem as well for a Zerg player, and I think the Roach strategy is a good idea. So surprisingly enough, Gretorp actually going for Bio here, which Bio has kind of been very, I guess for lack of a better word, shoved aside for Legacy of the Void so far in favor of mech, so it's always interesting to see Terrans that go Bio and how they're able to support it, and how they're really able to play out games against all these new Zerg units that can definitely kind of thrash them pretty good. But we'll have to see if Gretorp can take advantage of that. One big thing with Bio, by the way, guys, is that in Legacy of the Void, it's going to be so much more centric around drop play. So it can't be this type of unit composition where you just sit around in a ball and try to engage the other 2 races very reliably. You have to be relying on your drops, relying on getting a lot of smaller victories and adding up to one big overwhelming victory. Here comes these Zerglings, by the way, just trying to see what's going on. They have really no idea the Hellions are on the map right now. Only 2 Hellions, not really going to do too much. This is looking super standard as far as Heart of the Swarm type of play off of a command center first. Just going for these Hellions, trying to get a little bit of map control. Neuro trying to grab some SCVs. I think he did get 1. Not going to get any more than that though. So those first 8 lings, like we talked about, probably not going to do too much, and they definitely did not do too much. Roach is on the way as well. This is a pretty low econ opener actually from Neuro, opening up a 2-base Roach production before taking a 3rd, which again can be really weird because of the map and especially because of the spawn positions. So he's got a lot of creep to spread. He's got to really keep himself safe from, say, anything super strange like 2 factory Blue Flame Hellion, for example. He did scout in there though, and he knows that it is 3 barracks, so he's not going to be in danger of anything weird like that. Just pushing back these Hellions with these Roaches is Neuro. Gretorp in the meantime going double eBay on his wall here, which is semi-common, I guess, if you're confident you're not going to be busted anytime soon. This is a lot of roaches for this time in the game, though. So Gretorp, notice his Hellion movements a little bit, maybe trying to draw the roaches away, make them waste a little bit of time if this was going to be an all-in. But again, I don't think Neuro would be chasing that hard if this was going to be an all-in. Of course, we can see in the game that it's not going to be that. Just going to be a lair, it's going to be a baneling nest, and this is going to be kind of a normal transition after producing that first handful of roaches, just getting into more than likely Spire play from this point, as the baneling nest is coming down, which is typically the support you want for those mutas. And Hellion's trying to come in here once again, really not doing too much so far. You can see the workers killed only 3. Definitely not going to be too economical of an advantage for either player right now. Some Zerglings on the way, 1-1 upgrades on the way from Neuro as well. So this is all looking really normal, standard Spire play from the past. So we're effectively seeing Heart of the Swarm style play, with the exception of these tanks, in Legacy of the Void right now. And we're going to have to really see when the game changes in the late game, when people start to get higher level tech going on. The lair is going to finish up here. Typically when you finish lair, you want to get baneling speed and Spire right away if you're going to run this style, so that should be his next spending on gas, I'm going to have to guess. Be weird for him to make banelings right now, considering slow banes are usually pretty bad. So we'll have to see what his production is going to come down. There's the baneling speed right now. Spire should be coming down here any second. Just going to try to see what he can get with these lings. There is a small hole in the wall, so he can deal a little bit of damage against these units, as the Zerglings do get right on top of them. But still not trading too favorably. I mean, most of the time these are lings. They don't really matter too much unless you just throw away a ton of them. So we got okay trades there, nothing game-breaking. Gretorp able to hold that off, of course, with the tanks, with the good positioning here to minimize surface area. Marauders tanking a lot of damage as well. But this is all looking really normal. The Roach is trying to come up here, possibly very foolishly. They were on a weird rally, so they were trying to stop this command center from coming down, and they definitely did not do any of that. So they just get killed for no reason. Just kind of on a misrally a little bit. He does at least delay the command center, so that's a little bit of a win here for Zerg. And like we were talking about, Spire coming up behind this as well. So we're going to see a decent clutch of mutas, a decent clutch of banelings, just to hold off these first couple attacks from the Terran, as they typically start to get out on the map once they get their first 2 medevacs. Gretorp, a lot more interested in just securing a third base right now, rather than being too aggressive about getting on the map. Can't really fault him too much because his supply is up at the time being. He got a decent build order opener with the command center first versus the super non-economic 2-base roach opener from the Zerg, which of course, like we talked about, very justified based on the shape of this map, which I have to say is probably pretty bad for Zerg. So Terran getting on the map here with a lot of Marauders, so these banelings are probably not going to do too much, considering there's only a handful of Marines in this army, only 10 versus the 8 Marauders, so that's a lot of Marauders for this type of ratio. So banelings are about to finish, as we can see them morphing down here on the side, trying to prevent him from just walking into the main. He's going to cancel these upgrades and kill these Evo chambers, so that's a pretty good pick off here for Gretorp. He could actually just lift up and go home and feel pretty good about this. Losing a decent number of units there, so still kind of paying his way through that, but still delaying the upgrades and getting this far ahead on his own upgrades are going to be a pretty big deal. Some mutas coming down right now, Burrow coming down, so that's kind of cool. Hopefully we'll see some burrowed baneling shenanigans. And nothing too crazy is happening with these banelings as far as being able to move while burrowed, like they talked about at the beginning of the Heart of the Swarm beta. So I guess all you Terrans out there, be thankful for stuff like that. But definitely burrowed banelings is still a very strong strategy if you can get them in the right spots. But the problem is that this map shape is still very awkward, so getting those detonations is going to be pretty difficult. So we'll have to see what happens here. Just checking to see if there was anything weird down here. It's just an Overlord kind of AFKing. Yuta is going to clean up this drop here. As you can see, he did just re-unload those 2 medevacs that were full of units. They get destroyed for very little gains, and because of that, Neuro's able to take a decent supply advantage compared to where he was before, swinging it around by about 20 to 25. So nice little pickup there. Always want to see where you can get stuff going. There's one random Cyclone in this army, and actually they're starting to get mixed in fairly heavily. So this is going to be Bio plus Cyclone. This is where the game starts to diverge from Heart of the Swarm, at least in terms of this one. So nothing too crazy coming down here, looking fairly normal, as it is just Heart of the Swarm style, and Legacy of the Void kind of being splashed in. Here's up comes the attack here, full surround on the Lings, but these are almost 2-2 units here from the Bio, not quite, so the Zerg's going to go ahead and clean this up fairly economically, not losing too much, especially preserving a lot of the banelings and letting the Zerglings do all the work. That's typically the type of trades that you want if you're running against Bio in this matchup under normal circumstances, so definitely getting a pretty good engagement there. Infestation Pit coming down now. This could be for 3-3, could be for things like Ultras, as we've seen they're very strong against Bio. And Gretorp may be expecting this, hence the addition of the Cyclones for right now. Other than that, I don't know if the Cyclones are all that cost efficient against these big Zergling style of armies. You typically probably want to mix in more mines or more tanks and stuff like that. But here come the mines now, just as I say that, and he actually cancels it and switches into a tank. So it looks like Gretorp trying to feel out his unit composition for what the Zerg is going for. Maybe even this feels a little bit foreign against such a standard Heart of the Swarm style from the Zerg. And the command center's trying to land here, and there's a burrowed Zergling underneath. As soon as that skin comes down, yeah, he's dead. And the base gets landed. More importantly, if this is a planetary, this will give Terran a nice little outpost against the Zerg as he is able to expand closer and closer to the Zerg. Probably needs to transform that as soon as he can, so we should see that come down here in just a second. There's the hive for the Zerg, by the way, as he is trying to crash in on these rocks. Not really going to do too much, as the army should be able to recover here from Gretorp, just heading over as fast as he can. Mutalisk trying to focus down whatever they can, but the rocks are still going to remain intact, so for the most part, really just moving the army is what Neuro is doing. He could actually try to just turn these Banelings and dive on the army, as it looks like that is what he's going to do. As the Zerglings are trying to get a lot done here as well. They do pick off some free tanks. That's one really frustrating thing about mixing tanks into this type of composition, is that if they're ever caught by themselves, they are definitely bait and they will die almost instantly. So some scans coming down here for Gretorp, just trying to clear the creep. Really nice creep spread, by the way, as it is down over toward the middle of the map. Gretorp's just trying his best to move in here. No Widow Mines and no tanks right now, though, so these Zerglings are probably going to be pretty strong, even though the Terran's going to be at 3-3 fairly soon. Neuro definitely needs to get on top of those upgrades, and he should be able to start them right now, as the hive did just finish. And there they go immediately. So 3-3 on the way for Neuro, 3-3 almost done for Gretorp, or you could say a little bit past halfway. So he'll have a tiny window where he's ahead, and like we expected, down comes the Ultralisk Cavern. That should definitely bolster his army in the late game quite a bit. This random Overlord's definitely in some strange spots here out here on the map. Not really sure what to make of that, but I guess just for scouting for drops and hidden command centers and all kinds of weird stuff like that. Probably a good idea to mix those in. Here comes another attack here from the Zerg, just moving up here, trying to get the best thing they possibly can. Again, a lot of Zerglings in this army, but the one tank, and even the one behind it, supporting quite well. You can see just a couple of tanks, if they're surrounded properly and they're supported properly, they really mow through these heavy Zergling compositions. So we're going to have to see how this all starts to match up once the Ultralists start to hit the field as well. As we talked about that a little bit, how the Ultras seem really strong against Bio, and it's really all about the support that you can get on the map for the Ultras. Terran's starting to commit up here just a little bit, trying to bait the Zerglings back into these tank shots. And the Terran's effectively, established his fourth base pretty safely. Needs to get this second geyser running if he wants to spend the rest of his gas, which looks like he's actually okay. But building army are on the way here for Terran, not an upgrade you see every day. Chitinous plating and crackling upgrades on the way for the Zerg. So this is definitely going to be a long-term Ultralisk style of play. And surprise, here's a drop in your base, as we actually just weren't even paying attention to it. It just shows up, and it's like, by the way, there's a drop here. It just dies right away, does basically nothing. So Neuro able to clean that up pretty easily. But that gives Gretorp a decent availability to go ahead and move forward and scan. Needs to be careful of these Banelings here, actually not taking too bad of hits. Most of the times those will turn out to be economical if you can pick up most of your units in your medevac and maybe leave behind 1 or 2 Marines so that they waste the gas on the Banelings on just 1 Marine. Out come the Ultras, and this is getting a little bit scary here from the Zerg perspective, because the Terran's army is starting to look more and more formidable as time goes on. You definitely want those Ultras out to be ready for the big attack. By the way, it's going to be all these tanks are actually loaded into medevacs, so this is definitely what we're expecting to see a little bit more. And something we haven't seen quite yet is the advance forward with siege tanks with these medevacs. Makes them really easy to advance your position. But the Ultras are out now, so we're probably going to see some pretty crazy battles here in just a second. Marines trying to focus down these Ultras, and lol, don't you guys know you're only dealing 1 point of damage for every shot, at least when the armor upgrades all finish up here. So the Marines not really doing too much, kind of just tickling those Ultras to death the best they can, but nothing happening so far. This is turning into a really long and massive standoff. You'd almost like to see the Terrans start to abuse those rocks a little bit and get some good tank positioning, but they haven't so far. Ultralisk coming up here as well, going to try to get the best possible hits they can. This is one advantage of Bio's, that they're still pretty mobile, but you can see the Ultralisk are starting to kind of tear through this army. I'm actually surprised he did pull back. Maybe trying to respond to a drop here and has some weird hotkeys going on. The Mutas are going to get shredded by this. He needs to really be careful as he loses basically every single Mutalisk. Starting to refill here just a little bit on Mutas, but this drop is going to get a little bit out of control. Doesn't want to lose his hive. The Cracklings come up here. You can see the Cracklings really chew through this army quite quickly, a lot better than they did before. considering they do stack quite a bit and the Marines don't have a lot of base armor. So chewing through those Marines pretty fast, all those cracklings. But this siege up here from the Terran, the more tanks they add, the more scary this is going to get, because these tanks can be moved around really easily. You could see him flying them around in these medevacs, getting whatever position he wants without having the delay of having to move the siege tanks. Definitely makes him a lot more viable in this matchup here. Ultralisk starting to come up here once again. There's a lot of banelings mixed in here as well. The Ultralisk tanking the tank shots quite a bit. Tank's getting some pretty good hits on the banelings, so the Zerg army is definitely crashing in here quite a bit, doing a lot of damage, but still the Terran stands up to this reasonably well. The only downside for this is that the tanks are gone, so this is just mostly Marines against these Ultralisks, and like we talked about before, this is usually not going to do too much damage, so Gretorp just picks up wisely and just gets out of there the best he can. He's actually trying to force a base trade so he can adjust his unit composition the best as possible to deal with these Ultras, but the medevacs are just totally AFK right now as they just die for no reason whatsoever. One of them actually probably won't even unload, so he just lost 4 full medevacs, whereas he had an okay advantage. Could have at least kept these Ultras busy for a little while. So that was kind of unfortunate there from Gretorp. Gretorp's having a really hard time taking another base here, and for as much as people like to say Ultras are too strong in combat, the issue is that if the Zerg's creep spread is good enough, it's almost impossible to advance on the map against these guys, and it's almost impossible to take all these extra bases later on as the game goes on. So that's the biggest difficulty with these guys. It's not a matter of being able to not produce the right counters or whatever. It's mostly trying to move out on the map and get good positioning, because these guys are really hard to kill, and it means that they'll be able to repel your attacks on creep a lot more easily than you would really think. So that also means if you can't get position on the map, you can't just take extra bases. So the 5th base from Gretorp is definitely going to die here pretty soon. Terrans start to take a little bit of initiative and move forward while the army's out of position for the Zerg. I have no idea what it's doing over here, but maybe just a little bit of a misrally. It looked like he did just F2 and set everything back to the middle area where it could all kind of collaborate together. Here's the Thors coming out, trying to counter these Ultras once again, and we're going to see what happens in these subsequent fights, whether the Thors and tanks and Marauders and stuff can still stand up to these Ultralisks. This composition's pretty good, though. This is a lot of Marauders, a lot of tanks. They're, of course, on 3-3. Gretorp going to be dumping his extra Marines into drops, considering those are probably not going to be important for very much longer. So go ahead and drop it over here. Gretorp actually distance mining from this base, thinking he can actually take it, which is kind of funny, considering the Zerg is mostly established actually down here in the bottom left. But the drop coming down here, trying to go ahead and grab this high volley can, and the medevacs know they're dead, the Marines know they're dead as well. They don't really care because they're just going to swap out for more efficient unit composition anyway. So Gretorp kind of interestingly moving his way up towards the Zerg main, which is basically in tatters right now. There's just a few little shards of tech left, and that's it. The interesting thing as well is that Neuro is starting to add on a lot of corruptors, which if he transforms this into a Greater Spire, that'll be a big problem for the Terran, considering they don't have a lot of potential production for things like Vikings and whatnot. As you can see, only has 1 starport, and a lot of the factories were added on here for Thors and stuff, but Thors are awful against the Broodlords in this amount of numbers. So adding a command center here, Gretorp just kind of fortifying himself on this part of the map, saying that this is all I can do for mining right now, so I have to protect this for all it's worth. There is a little bit of sparse mining going on at the other bases, but they're pretty much mined out, so Gretorp's really hurting for money, whereas the Zerg just has infinity bases basically everywhere. It's just all over the map right now, even taking another base. He could even add another right here if he wanted to at any point. Here's an attack coming up right now as the Zerg does just start to posture in. The Ultras and Zerglings and everything all really piling in here quite well. So you can see there's so much stuff going on, my computer's actually having a little bit of a hard time handling this, so I apologize if the frame rate is dropping. But the Ultra is starting to come through here, and some fungals coming down. Ultra is still kind of crashing on top of this army. Zerg getting a really nice trade from that, as the Ultras are dead, but at the same time the Zerg, or rather the Terran, or excuse me, the Zerg, pardon all these corrections here, the Zerg actually does have a pretty frightening transition coming up here if he's able to start getting into those Broodlords. He could also use this caustic spray, which you can use on top of the of any building that you want, which he's not opting to use. He could easily just sit his corruptors right here and use it on this building, and that building would go down in no time. So I hope he actually activates that and shows us a little bit about that, because we haven't actually seen that yet. But the Terran's starting to push us back just a little bit. He's able to repair through that, and like we mentioned before, kind of laughing at the building upgrade, or the building armor upgrade. It did definitely shine through right there against all those Zerglings, so I guess that was nice for him. But the Zerg really starting to repower up here. Also, the supply difference is enormous right now, 173 to 83. The reason that this game isn't quite over yet is because the Zerg just doesn't quite have the units to knock this down. as he has a lot of his supply tied up in production as it's just coming out right now, whether it's Ultras or Infestors. Infestors are all low energy. He has these Corruptors here. He can use the spray, which I hope he uses right now to try and kill this building. So we'll have to see if he's able to do that. Yeah, okay, so now you can just sit here and watch and see how fast this is going to go if these guys crank up their damage, which you just have to sit there for long enough, and it didn't quite happen. But if it happens, the damage output from these guys is just insane. So you'll see how fast it is if he's able to ever get a good attack here. Dropping some changelings here, sacking the Overlord, or rather, sacrificing some hit points on the Overseer just to try to get in there. Gretorp is just so poor right now, though, and that's, again, what really comes down to these Ultralisk builds. It's just so hard to move out on the map. It's so hard to secure against a Zerg that can spread their creep really well because the Ultras are actually still pretty fast. And Gretorp is just totally starved right now. So the composition from the Zerg's been really nice. There's a Greater Spire like we expected, but since Gretorp's economy is just so low, there's just no way he's ever going to be able to overcome a 200-200 Zerg plus the impending Remax once the Zerg starts to lose units. So this is definitely a big uphill battle for the Terran right now, and I can definitely see kind of the frustration in the play, just saying like, you know what, I just had the hardest time taking another base from beyond this because it's just so hard if I have these immobile siege tanks. Granted, they are more mobile now, but here come the Ultras right now against a lot of these Marauders, really just chewing through them, taking hardly any damage as one Ultralisk is starting to get a little bit low, but the whole army gets blown up. No Ultralisk die in the battle, which is to be expected against this type of vanilla bio army. This is so many Ultras on the map right now. 14 Ultras. Pretty insane. He's going to turn on the caustic spray here so you guys can see how fast this actually is. We'll just watch the orbital command's health. And these guys should be kicking into their second mode, and now the Vikings push them away once again. So, geez, Viking, way to ruin our fun. A little bit of a drop here from Gretorp, but the Ultras are basically mopping up everything. Gretorp is 100% desperate right now for anything to happen. And of course, since they do have Vikings, you can't just turn around and kill them with the Corruptors if they get too close. But yeah, there's so many Ultras on the map here. Gretorp is so poor, there's no way he's going to be able to get through this. So I guess just kind of digesting what's happening here. Maybe you want to play around with the units a little bit more, but all he can make right now is Marines. And Neuro has so much money, he can just make whatever he wants. So, kind of an interesting game here, and again, just kind of pointing out the strength of these Ultras right now. And again, you guys can argue as much as you'd like about what units they could counter it and whatnot. You have to take in consideration the way that bio production works once you get into the late game. But also, it's just a matter of how you ever going to get a unit composition that's strong enough to be so spread out against so many Ultralisks when they can just attack you all at one point when you're weak. So, yeah, it's weird to think about right now, but at least we should be examining this from all angles and trying to figure out what's best for Legacy of the Void in the long term. So Gretorp just go ahead and says, like, you know what, there's no way I'm going to be able to win this game because I'm infinity dead. So he goes ahead and taps out, but hopefully that was an interesting game for you guys to at least sit here and watch. The caustic spray unfortunately did not go to its next level, so we didn't quite see that yet, but still, hopefully we're still learning a little bit about how the game works. Did see a little bit of different stuff here from both sides. I still have yet to see a bio play from a Terran that's really impressed me, so I hope we can see something like that in the future, so we can still kind of say, you know, bio's still okay against Zerg and whatnot, but for the time being right now, it looks like mech is the dominant composition. But I'll be back with more replays really quickly. I'm probably going to do one more tonight, so look out for that following this video. I'll be back really soon. Check out the rest of my videos and my tutorials and whatnot if you want to learn more about the game, but I'll be back very soon, like I said, and this is awkward, so I'm just going to go ahead and say goodbye.